Dear viewers, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you are in this world. Welcome to the second episode of my series, Navigating Polygamy. In this episode, I will be inviting my friend and colleague Shaf to take a drive through the streets of Ajman to discuss my personal polygamy story. I hope you will enjoy the episode. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here, AJ. It's an absolute honor, and I'm really excited to get to know the man himself. Why don't we take a big step back in time and you can give us a glimpse into your childhood and the memories you had from back then?
Well, I was born in Sri Lanka. My parents hail from Gulfport, but I don't have that many memories of Sri Lanka, to be honest with you. I left Sri Lanka when I was 4, and I do remember vividly leaving the country with my brother. And we arrived in Hong Kong. My grandfather had actually been in Hong Kong since the 1950s. He had business there. And my dad obviously was there with him. And when my dad got married, he felt Hong Kong was the place to be, and he moved his family there. I do remember vividly moving into a small room in Hong Kong with my brother and me sharing one bed, and my mom and dad another bed on the opposite side of the room. It was a place called Chung King Mansions. I remember moving again to an apartment in Hang Kar Road, Tsim Sha Tsui district of Hong Kong, where we, lived. I remember my first kindergarten, school. It was called Robinson Playgroup. And I remember Beacon Hill Primary School, which was another primary school that we, enrolled in. And strangely enough, I remember a small blonde kid picking his nose in my first lesson in that school.
That's a very odd thing to remember, but I can imagine why it stuck around in your head. So, as you were growing up in Hong Kong from, young child to young adult, what were some of the experiences and some of the impressions that stuck with you from that time?
Well, my parents are coming from a pretty conservative background, especially my mom. And as I remember looking back today as a mature adult, although some people may debate that.
He's got a point.
Seriously, but who's gonna debate your maturity at this point in your life?
Probably some of my ex-wives. I saw my mom having somewhat of a culture shock, struggling to adapt from life in Sri Lanka to life in Hong Kong. My dad was not the same. He was a seasoned traveler, and he was very kind of liberal in his mindset. But my mom was trying very hard to establish and keep that traditionalism, in our family values. When we entered the school system in Hong Kong, that was somewhat of a obstacle in that quest.
Interesting. Now there are obstacles.
What happened was that we were enrolled in a school that was diametrically opposite to the type of traditionalism that my mom was trying to, cultivate in us, right? But my dad was adamant to send us to the best schools. He wanted that very much. And although he wasn't a rich man, this is what he strived to do. حبيب كيفك؟ اثنين كرك شاي ممكن؟
إن شاء الله.
Thank you.
Hey, bye, Tutti.
شكرا حبيبي.
So, speaking about these schools, what was it about them that presented these challenges?
Well, it's not so evident in the early days of your childhood because there's an innocence about children that stands the test of time and place. The transition usually happens in the teenage years when the teenager starts to observe the behavior of his peers and he starts to understand the consequences of those behavior. Shaf, people can be influences or they can be influenced, and at times both, right? Suffice to say, the lifestyle that I experienced in the school system was drastically and diametrically opposed to the lifestyle that my mom was trying to inculcate in us. And frankly speaking, I was leaning towards the lifestyle that the school system offered.
That lifestyle can be pretty appealing to a young man, but what happened next? What were your next steps from there on?
Well, I was leaning towards that liberal lifestyle and rejecting the traditionalism that my family was trying to inculcate. In any given day, when you're with a group of people that behave in a particular way, have particular values and norms, you tend to follow those behavioral patterns. And let's face it, no one wants to be a black sheep in a group. The liberal lifestyle has an excitement that compels the young adult to gravitate towards it more than traditionalism. In my early teenage years and my early 20s, I embraced this lifestyle wholeheartedly.
Right. And how do you go from this liberal lifestyle to the traditionalism that you contend polygamy is?
Well, it didn't happen immediately for me. It took several years. I don't want to claim to be religious, but what happened to me was I was steering towards a religious direction. And I realized that I need to marry to reintroduce myself to that traditionalism. And in 1991, I did exactly that. My new wife and I, we embarked on a journey to learn and live that lifestyle that we believed in. But, Shaf, men are men.
We're men, right? Oh, indeed we are, sir. Men.
And polygamy and being polygamous is in the very essence of our being. Either men can do this in a legitimate way, or they do it in an illicit way. And some men, of course, just leave it as a dream. They don't do anything about it, and that's fine. And I also acknowledge that there are men who do not prefer to exercise that biological desire. However, I was not from that category, although I refused to allow myself to stray towards that illicit arrangement.
Okay, I see. So did you enter into a polygamous relationship right after marrying your first wife?
Well, it didn't happen in a hurry because I didn't know that there was an option for polygamy at that time. But in 1993, I met an Islamic scholar who later became my friend, and to this day, he's still my friend. He, in fact, introduced me to the idea that polygamy was a legitimate option to infidelity. And the discussions that we had surrounding it at that time was making absolute sense to me. But unfortunately, my wife, she was not ready to share me with another woman. And I realized, being the mature individual that I am, had I embarked on this lifestyle, I would have probably been unhappy in both marriages. So I parked the idea, in the back of my head somewhere. Plus the fact I didn't have sufficient finances to look after two families at that time. So it didn't happen in a hurry.
Right. So when did the polygamous lifestyle actually begin?
Well, before it happened, fast forward to 2006. My wife approached me and said, look, if you would like to marry a second wife, I won't object to it. I didn't really take it that seriously initially, until a friend of mine prompted me to take the leap.
Just do it!
And then it happened. I entered into this very, very intriguing journey that led to a very, very complicated lifestyle. And I cover that to some degree in my book.
Okay, and I've noticed you use the word navigate quite frequently right throughout your book, in fact. Why is that?
You're right, Shaf, I do. But I would also like people to focus on some other words. Burden, responsibility, obligation, struggle, patience, and calm after the storm. And of course, navigation, it's important. You navigate your distances, you navigate your finances, you navigate the emotions. So it's an important word to understand as well. These are some of the things that you need to know if you want to enter into this lifestyle. And I know this firsthand.
Right, so what would you say that navigating polygamy actually entails? And how would you say you fared when navigating that journey yourself?
Well, I wrote a whole book about it. So I hope the audience will buy it, and it's available on Amazon, Kobo and Lulu. Read it and understand how I navigated it. How I did it, it was certainly a life-changing event, and it brought about many unknowns. It's probably difficult to admit, but in the early days, I struggled to adapt mentally to this new lifestyle and the new people in my life. This mental struggle probably contributed to my inability to manage the emotions of multiple people. I felt that I had bitten off more than I could chew. Nevertheless, I persisted, and while I was never perfect, and who is perfect, there were significant periods in my life where I believed I managed it and navigated the lifestyle reasonably well.
Right. So Fazal, given all that you have experienced so far and all that you know of this lifestyle, what's some advice you would give to a man who is looking to traverse down this path?
Several advices. For Muslim men primarily, their obligation is towards God and the rules and regulations that He has set for this lifestyle. They embarked on this polygamy journey to avoid infidelity. Excellent. But while in the journey, they have to understand they have further responsibilities to God as well as the stakeholders involved in this lifestyle. It is no walk in the park, and they have to understand, at least theoretically, this before the journey begins. They have to also understand the plight and the emotions of their wives, especially the first wife, because she is put through a process that she did not volunteer for. They should set the stage, which I cover in detail in my book. They should be patient, and they have to struggle. And God willing, they will be successful.
Okay, and finally, what's some advice you would give to the women whose husbands wish to get married again?
If I had a hat, I would take it off them. Because in current times, when polygamy is such a radical step, what she allows herself to be involved in is nothing short of magnanimity of indescribable magnitude. They will experience a wide range of emotions, which I do cover in my book. I advise them to stay strong and do not allow their emotions to get the better of them. Easy to say, of course, than do. I advise them to try to look at the bigger picture, particularly if their husbands embarked upon this journey in a dignified way. Remember, polygamy is not infidelity. For Muslim women in particular, I say to them that God will not put her in a position of difficulty except that is a means to elevate her in rank in His eyes spiritually. Thank you, dear viewers, for watching, and I hope this was informative. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Facebook and Instagram.